I understand that the Stouffer family is struggling emotionally with this situation, and I'm sure that the backlash they're receiving is adding to that. I sincerely hope that you and all of your children are receiving appropriate professional guidance to aid you in making it through this as healthfully as possible. From where I am standing, I feel that you are magnificently misguided, and that as a result, you have altered a young life negatively and potentially caused drastic harm that he may bear the wounds of for the rest of his life. In my opinion, that is an egregious wrong, and you have little to defend regarding this. While I believe all of this, I think that this is an opportunity for conversation that needs to start being had. One of parenthood and how a person needs to evaluate if they can handle parenthood in any degree, and what factors need to be considered when approaching this from a place with education on child development. It is unfair as people for us to approach something as demanding and life altering as parenting with the potential of results as heavy and devastating as irreversible trauma and a life filled with struggle without first obtaining certainty that we will be able to offer the best of our abilities in advocacy for our child, no matter what their needs may be. To give you a little bit of background of who I am and what I might know about this, I'm a student in the process of studying for my degree in early childhood education. I've worked in childcare for going on 5 years. I've worked with numerous age groups outside of childcare as well, including adults with developmental disabilities for a period of time. Additionally, I have a learning disability that onset in early childhood caused by early childhood epilepsy. All of these things combined puts me in a position where I have been having conversations of advocacy for much of my life. My hope in talking about this is not to slander this family or sensationalize a heartbreaking case, but to start a conversation. And I hope that my viewers are not here to hate, but to seek to understand. Having conversations about this will lead us to seeing less cases like this one. Especially when it comes to psychology and brain development, knowledge is power and a tool for change. Micah and James Stauffer are a couple who have 4 children and a family vlog on YouTube under Micah's name. Micah also does some videos that I'd describe as lifestyle content, and James has his own channel called Stauffer Garage, where he takes videos of his work cleaning and working on cars. His channel has 938K subscribers, and Micah's channel has 706K subscribers. Is that the couple announced on their channel a little over 3 years ago that they would be starting a process to adopt a child from China, and they documented their adoption journey on their channel, gaining significant amounts of attention as well as brand deals and, of course, praise from viewers. The information that was disclosed about the child throughout this is that the couple chose to adopt a child who had been classified as a special focus case, meaning that their child would have moderate to significant special needs. Micah also discusses that her adopted son is, quote, profoundly developmentally delayed, end quote, and that his diagnosis included having a stroke in utero, having level 3 autism, having reactive attachment disorder, and having a sensory processing disorder. The couple also disclosed that it is unlikely that their adopted son would ever be fully independently functioning, meaning that he may rely on Micah and James's care and advocacy for the rest of his life. In October of 2017, they brought the child home from China, also documented in a video. The adoption was finalized, and the child continued to live with the family for 2 years. And long-term viewers know the child's progress, saying that he began to use sign language to communicate, and despite his reactive attachment disorder, was able to become comfortable with his parents and close with his siblings. Micah announced in September of 2019 that her son began a therapy commonly used for children on the autism spectrum, known as applied behavioral analysis, or ABA therapy. This was the last video their adopted son appeared in, and this was followed by several videos that fit in with the rest of Micah's channel content, minus their adopted son. There was no mention of their son's whereabouts, an occurrence that hadn't happened since the start of the adoption process. Several weeks ago, they came out with a tearful video where James and Micah disclosed that their adopted son had been, quote, rehomed, unquote, and was with his, quote, new mommy, end quote. Recently, Micah came out with an apology on Instagram that reads as follows. struggling with sensory overstimulation, something that comes with autism spectrum disorder, but is often worsened in sensitivity by a change in routine. An example of something that may trigger this from my experience could be a very small change in routine. Maybe circle time was done a bit differently, or lunch is something they weren't expecting. A child experiencing sensory overstimulation may cover their ears, become restless, have trouble focusing, may feel overexcited, and may act out aggressively toward themselves or others by banging their heads against surfaces, or pinching, throwing their body on the ground, hitting, pinching, kicking, or biting themselves or others. I've both witnessed each of these behaviors over multiple individuals I've worked with, and I've studied the nature of these disorders in an academic setting. These are all behaviors that can be treated and replaced with healthier outlets, with significant and persistent appropriate therapy and education. There are researched and proven ways to handle all of it, and experts available to aid in carrying it out. Signs and symptoms of reactive attachment disorder can include an aversion to physical touch, control issues, anger problems, and difficulty accessing empathy. Mike and James claim that their adopted son is happier with his new home, which may or may not be true, but is kind of an irrelevant point to me. He is still going to be left with the trauma that you have imposed on him from a place of greed and chosen ignorance. So in this video, Micah is working with her son on some of his ABA therapy exercises, and he seems comfortable, confident, and as though he has made phenomenal strides from the time when he was adopted, at which point he was nonverbal and extremely resistant to Micah by her own claims. And this is all fantastic to see. One might commend Micah for the fantastic job she's doing. Only working with a child with autism is not always like this, and these moments are often obtained after a lot of patience and routine. There are many moments when a child with autism can be very, very difficult to help regulate emotions. As I've discussed, this can look very many ways and can appear very aggressive. Micah working well with her son in this moment is not impressive to me. Micah working well with her son in this moment is not impressive to me. You being on your best when your child is on their best and the camera is rolling, I'm not convinced. Funny that this is one of the few videos you've kept up that contains your adopted son, Micah. This once again shows me that you care more about the lifestyle of a social media influencer, more about impressing an audience and nourishing your savior complex, than you do about the well-being of this helpless child that you claimed you would never abandon. This is proof to me that you do not care about his privacy if it means you look good. And when he made it harder for you to make yourself look good, when he made your life hard, your love and commitment to him proved to be conditional. Because you adopted him for all the wrong reasons initially, but you were hoping it would be easy enough to be worth the payoff. And it wasn't to you, only you get to keep the payoff from Bali, and he is left abandoned in a new home. Instead of supporting your former son through this transition, you fled on a luxury vacation to Bali. While he adjusted to a new home with a new family, you left him behind to splash on the beach and play in the sand and post content for your subscribers. If you ever cared for that child in the way a mother would, you could never do that. I don't care what you say, and you continue to say he was the problem, and he was hard for you to handle, and you weren't equipped to handle him. At the end of the day, you chose to be his parent, and you still defend what you did, and you still say you're glad you did it, but you're sorry to hurt people who follow you. You're sorry that you are getting canceled for this, and that people are upset. You're hoping you can revive your image, so you can continue to reap luxury while subjecting this innocent child that you swore to advocate for and to love, no matter what, to trauma.
I was never a lucky YouTuber. I didn't just get lucky. I had a lot of tactic, I guess. But one of the big things I did was I started studying analytics really hard. My husband is the mastermind behind SEO. He is literally an SEO god. Once he started learning a lot of really amazing tricks that I am so grateful for, I started learning about researching and realizing that if you don't research, even if you put up a killer video, if nobody's searching it and YouTube doesn't like it, that's it. There is nothing more to that. But if you do your research and you do your research right, you could have a liquid gold mine.
And you want to say this wasn't intentional or for money. Here's what happened. You'd been considering adopting, were perhaps encouraged to do so when it was trending. started the journey, eventually posted your first video where you traveled from China for the first time, which grossed, I believe, 5.5 million views, continued with the process, even in your words, quote, ran with it, end quote, heard the diagnoses and the doctors telling you not to carry through with it, but ignored because you weren't willing to give up this image of a wonderful savior saint woman who's saving this child and sharing with the internet. And then it became too hard. You tried to move on smoothly, but it didn't work. You subjected this child to a home that was using him and considering less of him. So yes, Micah and James, the general public of the internet are angry at you. I'm sorry, because the internet is advocating for your former son in the veracity that you should have. It breaks my heart that children are subjected to trauma by careless, entitled, self-important people like yourself, who had the means to care for him and would have if you actually considered him your own, without ulterior motives. I'm devastated for the trauma that this child has been subjected to. It angers me that he was used for profit by people who got carried away with a taste of being labeled saints and made a clouded decision that they were not prepared for the consequences of. People who were supposed to love and care for him at all costs. People who instead abandoned him and gave him away when they felt as though it was too difficult to handle. I feel that this child was exploited, and although I've always had an issue with family vlogging channels, as I feel that by nature they exploit children, I am furious with how this child was exploited in such a life-altering way when he already had so many odds stacked up against him. The progress he has made is now likely subject to regression. He likely will carry wounds from his experience for the rest of his life, and his trauma is available on the internet for the world to see. This is wrong. Nobody deserves this. I hope that his new family is truly his forever family and can provide appropriate treatment and unconditional love. I hope that he conquers his struggles, whatever they end up being, and is able to find meaning and joy in his life more than he finds anxiety and struggle. I recommend that if the Stauffers family hasn't already, get professional aid in navigating this loss with your family. The children still in their care have lost a brother, and they deserve to be able to sort through this in a therapy setting with experienced, licensed professionals. A sign for change and a will to do better from Micah and James to me would be to stop creating family content that involves their children. All of your children deserve to have their childhood in privacy, and not just when it benefits you to ask for privacy, like you did with your formerly adopted son. They deserve true privacy, as they are too young to consent to being filmed and profited from. I hope that people stop exploiting children for internet content, and that we think twice before we post videos of our children. Ask yourselves this: are you doing this for your kids? Do they benefit from this more than they are harmed from this? No? Then who are you doing it for? Put your phone down.